Hello everyone. Today is day 13 and we are on writing section. Today we wanted to practice task 2. We have to start on task 2, but let's first finish what we started yesterday on how to give the test on computer based test, right? So let's complete that session first and then we will move on to task 2 of writing an essay. So let's do it.
Designers, because she said we're not looking for any designers, right? Also, okay, so next up, we're going to be taking a look at the reading section on the computer-based test or computer-delivered test. And basically, I'm going to be showing you the tools that are available to you when you are taking the computer-based test for reading comprehension. And so we'll be showing you how to copy and paste answer choices, highlighting text, making notes on text, just different tools that you can use when you are doing the computer-based test for reading comprehension. This works for the general exam and for the academic exam. And in addition to that, since we're going to be going through a few questions, I will also discuss strategy a little bit. Up first, we're going to be going through a flowchart question. So let's take a look at the flowchart question, and I'll talk a little bit about it, and then show you how it works. Okay, so this is a flowchart question, right? Over here we see the chart, CR mimetic, and then we have, this is the first answer choice for number 1. Now for number 2, in order to reveal the language for number 2, you have to actually click inside the box, and that'll show you the language that the answer connects to. Or for number 3, you have to click inside the box. So unless your cursor is in the box, you won't see that language that's present. Now, of course, this is a flowchart. So a flowchart is a question that goes in order, right? It goes in order. So first you're going to find where number 1 is, and then number 2, and then number 3, right? And if we're doing, so that's what we're doing in terms of a strategy standpoint. So when I'm first looking at this, I know I'm not going to find number 1 until it's going to be after we have what's mentioned about CR mimetic, okay? So in the reading passage, right here, let's see, if we're going down looking for CR mimetic, there's nowhere in that first paragraph, but it's pretty clear that it's right here. CR mimetic. So you take your, if I can do it carefully, and you can highlight, right? And so that lets me know that we're starting from here down. I'm not going to find any answers in this first paragraph. There's no point in looking at this first paragraph because this is a flow chart and it goes in order, right? So now we're looking for our next part for number 1, CR mimetic, and less something is processed. Less something is processed. So that's what I need to find, right? That's what I need to find. All right, so let's see. The best study candidate for a caloric mimetic works by interfering with the way cells process glucose. Okay, here it is right here. I see it. Right here is number 1. Right, because here is in this sentence right here. And the reason why I know it's in this sentence right here is because this word minimizes is a synonym for the word less. Right, it's a synonym for the word less. So when we're looking at the word, we can make a note. I was going to show you, I'm just making a note right here. Right, minimize is a synonym for the word less. Right, so what is produced less, or what is minimized, right? Caloric restriction, which is what the CR stands for. Caloric restriction minimizes the amount of glucose. Now, if I want this, the answer is glucose. If I want that as an answer choice, I can highlight it. I can press Control C for copy, right? And then Control V and paste the answer right there. Okay? And that way we can avoid spelling mistakes. Right now, next we have production of ATP is decreased, and that's right here, decreases ATP. So we have that part. Now, for the next questions for number 2, I click in box number 2, and I'm looking for fewer of something is being emitted. Fewer of something being emitted. Cells damaged by disease because fewer of something are being emitted. So theory 1 and theory 2. So I know I'm going to find two theories. So I know it goes in order. So I just keep on scanning down. I'm looking for where they're talking about. Here it is right here. Right, researchers have proposed several explanations. So now we're getting to the theories. Right here, I see the language that says one possibility. Right, one possibility, that language of one possibility. That's theory 1. And right here in the next sentence, I see another hypothesis suggest. That's theory 2. So now I know exactly where to find the answer for number 2 and exactly where to find the answer for number 3. So I'm looking for cells less damaged by disease because fewer blank are emitted. One possibility relates to ATP's making machinery's emission of free radicals. Right? So that answer right here, emission, free radicals are emitted, free radicals. Right? Now, if I keep reading that sentence, you can see the other parts of the answer, but I can see it very, very clearly. I have it highlighted, Control C, Control V, right? And there it is. So if you're asking, well, where does it say fewer free radicals? Read the whole sentence and you'll see it. One possibility relates to the ATPs making machinery's emission of free radicals, which are thought to contribute to aging to such ag-related diseases as cancer by damaging cells. So all that is right there was for theory 1. Reduced operation of the machinery should limit their production, right? So fewer. So this is where we're talking about number 1. Now number 2 is going to be right here, and I have to click the cursor in the box. Sales focus on, because blank is in short supply. Sales focus on. So in that next sentence, my answer choice must connect to language focus on, right? Focus on. So when I'm looking at this sentence, this is one of the biggest mistakes a lot of students make. A lot of students will look at this next sentence where they see another hypothesis and they'll say, I need to understand that whole entire sentence. So I'm going to read that sentence 4, 5, 6 times until I try to understand the whole sentence. For what? It's unnecessary. It's completely unnecessary. Find a synonym for the word focus on, and you'll find your answer choice. Right? So when you look at this sentence, that emphasizes is the synonym in this sentence for focus on. That's the synonym for focus on. That's the synonym for focus on, right there. Okay? And so that means my answer choice is going to be preservation. Control C, Control V, paste it in, right? So that's how we do a flow chart. And that's how you actually can also really manage some of the skills in terms of some of the skills with answering, some of the tools, I should say, with reading comprehension, the highlighting, the making notes, the copying and pasting an answer choice into the boxes. I'm just trying to give you some kind of real simple idea of how it works. Now up here, you can see the clock, and my clock is in yellow, which I don't like. I hope but it tells you exactly how much time is there, okay? All right, but this is how it works in terms of how you operate reading comprehension using the computer for the IELTS computer-based test, okay? So I'm going to go through another question type and show you some of these same skills and try to go through a question type that might require you to be able to drag and drop, such as a headings question or a question like that, or a sentence completion question, where you might have to drag and drop language. So I'm going to show you kind of how that works as well. Okay, talk to you soon. Hi there again. Up next, we're going to be taking a look at a sentence completion question, or really what I call it is a fill the blank question. Same thing. I think of the sentence completion question being a little bit different in terms of the title. A sentence completion question to me is more of where they give you half the sentence and you have to find the other half of the remaining sentence. I like to refer to this as a fill the blank question. The IELTS people like to refer to it as sentence completion. I guess it is. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It's just labeling. Let's move on. So this is a fill the blank question. And with a fill the blank question, one thing we know is that a fill the blank question goes in order, right? So number 1, then number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, it goes in order. So when I'm looking at the questions, as you very well know, the first thing from a strategy standpoint, I'm looking at which question is going to be the easiest. Well, this middle question where we have a date of 1911, that's going to be the easiest for me to find first, right? Also, number 4, with X-ray radiography, because there's no synonym for it. That's easy to find. And my answer choice is going to connect to a medical technique. For number 3, it's going to connect to whatever's in that sentence. It's going to be some type of element. Gold, silver, nickel, uranium. Those are elements. I'm not sure if nickel's an element, but okay. And then we can, once we find those, what we know is before number 3 are number 2 and number 1, after number 4, number 5, and number 6. Okay. Now, some people would say, well, can I just start with number 1 if I want to? Sure, you can start with number 1 if you want to. I'm just talking about it from a standpoint of being able to save time, right? So when I'm looking at the passage, I'm going very quickly through and I'm looking at dates. And I can tell that they're going in order in terms of dates: 1895, 1896, 1897, 1904, 1900, 1906, there's 1911, right? So I know that my first question is going to be right there. Right, so in 1911, Marie Curie, number 3, Marie Curie received recognition for her work on the element. So in 1911, she was awarded the Nobel Prize. That's the recognition. Boom, boom, boom. That's recognition. Synonym language, everybody. For chemistry, for the isolation of a pure form of radium. Radium is the only element that's mentioned. That means my answer is radium. To avoid spelling mistakes, you can highlight it, you can copy it, you can paste it. Okay? And then for number 4, now right here we have a scroll bar which lets you scroll up and down very quickly when they give you a long passage, which is nice. I really like it that how they have the reading passage on the left side, the questions on the right side. That's very helpful because those of you that have taken the paper-based test before, you very well know how challenging it can be sometimes to have to flip the page. That can be a real bother sometimes. So I think being able to look at them across from each other is a big help. I'm going to do number 4 next because I know it's after number 3. And right here I see X radiography. Right, that lets me know that that's where number 4 is going to be. Now, what am I looking for here? I'm looking for my answer choice for number 4 has to connect to some type of medical technique, right? Some type of medical technique. So, during World War I, with the help of her daughter, she devoted herself to the development of X radiography, including the mobile units, which came to be known as little Curies, used for the treatment of, there's the language right there, used for the treatment of, that is synonym for what? Medical technique, treatment of, medical technique for wounded soldiers. Now, some people would probably would make the mistake of putting the answer as wounded soldiers. Wounded soldiers. What does our answer, what does the directions say what? The directions say one word only. So we don't put the word that describes the type of soldier. We just put the word soldier, right? We just put the word soldier. Control C, Control V. The answer choice there is soldiers, right? If you put wounded soldiers as your answer choice, you will be marked wrong. You will lose points on that, right? So make sure that you always read your directions. Okay, so I know 5 and 6 are after number 4, and I know 1 and 2 are above number 3. So I'm going to go ahead and find 1 and 2 first. I know 1 and 2 are located here, right? So for number 1, we're looking for when uranium was discovered, we're looking for a type of element, right? Had the same property. So not uranium, but another element. So let's look for that language. Okay, here it is right here. All right. Uranium was discovered. All right, so, which Marie later called radioactivity. Marie decided to find out if the radioactivity discovered in uranium was to be found in other elements, right? So now they're gonna in other elements, so they're gonna mention in the next sentence, we know this because things go from general to specific. She wanted to know if it could be found in other elements. That means in the next sentence, they're going to tell you the element. She discovered that this was true for thorium, right? So when it says had the same property, that's the same as saying this was true for. It has the same properties of radioactivity. That means the answer choice would be thorium. So we highlight it. We control. When I say control, I'm pressing the button on the keyboard that says CTRL, right? Control C, like cat. Control V, like victory, and that's how we put the answer choice in there. Number 2, Marie and Pierre Curie's research into the radioactivity of the mineral known as. So we're looking for the radioactivity of a mineral known as. That led to the discovery of two new elements, right? So her research into the radioactivity of the mineral known as. So this is where number 1 is. This is where number 3 and 4 are. That means number 2 has to be in here. Right, turning her attention to minerals. Okay, so topic sentence tells me exactly where it is. Right, so turning her attention to minerals, she found her interest drawn to pitchblende, a mineral whose radioactivity superior to that of uranium, be explained only by the presence of one or small quantities of an unknown substance. Pierre, her husband, joined the work he had undertaken to resolve this problem, led to discovery of new elements, polonium and radium. Polonium and radium are the 2 new elements, because it says led to the discovery of. That means for number 2, what they've done for number 2 is they've taken these 2 sentences. They've taken these 2 sentences for number 2, and they've combined. They've taken the essence or paraphrased. They've paraphrased those 2 sentences into one sentence. And that's sometimes how questions are created. Okay. Now, so it should be clear to you now that the answer is pitchblende. Right? Radioactivity of the mineral known as. Drawn to pitchblende, a mineral. Right? So sometimes what they do is they reverse the language. Here it says mineral known as pitchblende. Here it says drawn to pitchblende, a mineral, right? So they reverse the language. And very often, sometimes they'll do that to trick a student or fool the student so they don't see the answer choice. So you need to be aware of that, okay? So our answer here would be pitchblende. Okay. And next we're looking for number 5, Marie Curie saw the importance of collecting radioactivity. All right, so we're talking about collecting radioactive material. That's what this is referring to, both for research and cases of something else. So it's 2 things. One reason is research, and then when we look in the reading passage, it's going to tell us the other one. All right, so collecting radioactivity. So when this is where number 4 is right here. So I'm going to keep on scanning, and I'm looking for something that's talking about her seeing the importance of collecting radioactivity. Right? I'm looking for a synonym for collect. All right. Here it is right here. Okay. Accumulate. The word accumulate is a synonym for the word collect. That means I know number 5 is in that sentence. As I've told you, things go in order. One of Marie Curie's outstanding achievements was to have understood the need to accumulate intense radioactive sources, not only to treat illness, but also to maintain an abundant supply of research. So right here we have our two things. But again, we're playing around with reversal. Right? So here we have the first one, research, but here in the sentence they mention it as the second one. But it says what? Not only to treat illness, but also, to maintain research. So one thing is research, the other one is illness. But in the passage, they mention illness, then research. In the sentence, they mention research and then illness. Now, if I want to, I can just type the word illness there. I don't have to copy and paste. I could just type it there. Okay. All right. So, and then for the final one, the radioactive material stocked in Paris contributed to. We can see that in this last sentence, Paris, stock. All right. That means it's right here. This is where number 6 is located. So the radioactive material stocked in Paris contributed to the discoveries in the 1930s of the blank and what was known as artificial radioactivity. All right, so right here we see artificial radioactivity. So again, what they've done here is they've taken these two sentences, and these two sentences are connected because this next sentence starts with a reference pronoun, this work. So we took two sentences, they're paraphrasing it into one sentence to create a question. Okay? They're taking two sentences, paraphrasing it into one sentence to create a question. So here, this information comes from two sentences to create this question. So when we look at the answer, for the answer choice, we have to read both of those sentences that were used to create that one sentence question. The existence in Paris at the Radium Institute of a stock of 1.5 grams of radium made a decisive contribution to the success of the experiments undertaken in 1930. So we don't have a discovery yet. This work prepared the way for the discovery. There it is right there. Discovery of the neutron. So our answer is neutron. Neutron. Okay. All right. So again, I'm really showing you. I'm more trying to show you the way you can use the computer when you're doing reading comprehension, right? I cover all of the strategy for doing fill the blank questions in the previous lectures in the general section, or the previous lectures in the academic section. I cover strategy several times, right? But what I'm trying to show you here are just the different things that you can do when you're doing reading comprehension on the computer-based test, okay? So I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, and this next video, we're going to be looking at a headings question. And the purpose of me doing this video is just to show you how you have to be able to drag and drop answer choices, okay? How you have to be able to drag and drop answer choices. So in terms of strategy for a headings question, I've given you a lot of lectures In the academic section, I've talked about it. In the live class videos, I've talked about it. In terms of strategy for the headings question, I've gone over this a lot. So there have been a lot of videos that I put in there that have explained and talked about how to do a headings question. So with this one, again, the focus is not really about teaching strategy. I'm going to talk about strategy, but if you really want a lot of in-depth discussion and explanation of headings question strategy, go look at the live videos, the live class videos that covered it, and also the lectures in the general section and in the academic section that cover that topic, okay? Now, with the headings question, first of all, in terms of dragging and dropping, if this were the answer choice for number one, we would pull it over there in the box, drop it in there, okay? And if I don't like that answer, I drag it over here and I drop it, okay? There's number one, which covers these first two paragraphs. Number two is for this paragraph, it's for the paragraph that's below the number, okay? Number three is for the paragraph below the number. Number four is for the paragraph below the number. So with the headings question, you know my strategy already, okay? Because you've been taking my course and you know my strategy already. My strategy focuses on looking at the first two sentences of a paragraph and then finding the information that matches what's in those first two sentences. The first two sentences are the most important sentences because they relate directly to the topic sentence, what the paragraph is all about, okay? So for this one, I have to look at both of these paragraphs. Okay, some years ago, when several theoretical physicists, principally Heiberg and Kerner of Stuttgart, Germany, began publishing papers on traffic flow publications, normally read by traffic engineers. So these two physicists started to publish papers on traffic flow. They were clearly working outside their usual sphere of investigation. They had noticed that if they simulated the movements of vehicles on a highway using the equations that describe how the molecules of a gas move, some very strange results emerged. The strangest thing that came out of these equations, however, was the implication that congestion can arise completely spontaneously. No external causes are necessary, right? So when you look at these the first sentences in these paragraphs, and this top paragraph is telling us that these two physicists started publishing papers on traffic flow, which is usually done by traffic engineers, right? And they had noticed something strange with their equations. So what matches that information, right? What matches that information? I see the answer already, right? How a concept from one field of study was applied to another, because the first sentence tells us what? They were physicists. They applied their physicist knowledge to the area of traffic engineering and traffic flow. So how one concept from one field, physics, was used and applied to another field, traffic engineering. We pull that directly from those first two sentences. Now we move down to the second one. The physicists, or if we wanted to, we can highlight it, which might be helpful in terms of seeing it better. Right, so when you're looking at that, you can see it a lot better, right? The physicists have challenged proposals that say maximum capacity for vehicles on highways. They argue that it may not simply be enough to limit the rate at which vehicles are allowed to enter. Rather, it may be necessary to time each vehicle's entry onto a highway precisely to coincide with a temporary drop in the density of vehicles along the road. So what is this sentence saying, right? What is it saying? It's saying they're challenging these proposals to set a maximum capacity. They're challenging a proposal. They're saying it's not enough just to limit how many vehicles are allowed. It says you need to regulate the time, right? You need to regulate the time. So what matches that information? A math experiment? Nothing about that. A lack of investment? No. Disagreement between experts? No. There's no disagreement. How different countries? No. The impact of driver behavior on traffic speed? No. Right? A proposal to take control away from the driver. That's our answer choice. Why is that our answer choice? Because it says it's not enough to simply say how many cars can go. What they're saying is you have to only let the people, you take the control away from the driver. The driver can no longer go when he wants to go. You tell him he can go and enter at this time, at this rate. Okay? However, research into traffic control is generally centered in civil engineering departments, and here the theories of the physicists have been greeted with some skepticism. So we know what this is going to be about. We know what this is going to be about. Okay? The engineering people disagree with the physicists. Right? Here we're getting with areas of doubt. James Bank, a professor of civil environmental engineering, suggested that a sudden slowdown in traffic may have less to do with the chaos theory than with driver psychology. Right? So he's talking about, in this first sentence, I can already look at it and tell you, from this first sentence, I can look at it and tell you that this person is going to be talking about the driver's psychology. What is the driver thinking about? Okay? Look at your answer choices. There's only one answer choice that's talking about the driver's psychology or the driver's behavior, right? The answer choice has to be this. So you see what happened there. If I don't put it all the way in the box, it'll reverse back. So you need to be careful, right? That's not close enough. Boop, goes back. So you have to take that answer and put it all the way in the box, and they'll stay. Okay? So that's how we do a matching headings question. And I kind of went over just strategy a little bit more for you. But that's how you drag and drop. That's how you highlight the relevant sentences. But to really do well with this question, you have to be able to pull out what is this question talking about? What are these sentences talking about? What's the controlling idea or controlling thought? Okay? Thanks a lot. Hi there. Glad to be joining you again to go through another lecture on the computer-based test for reading comprehension. The things I'm showing you in these videos apply to the general exam or the academic exam. Applies to both. Okay? Again, we're talking about what you're doing on the computer-based test in terms of the tools that you have available to you. If you want to really learn a lot more about strategy, we have a lot of videos in the general section and the academic section to kind of go over strategy. I'm kind of showing you in these videos how you really go about applying that strategy. So here, we're dealing with a multiple choice question. We have questions 1, 2, 3, and 4. Hello, students, and welcome to another lecture. We're going to be taking a look at a general reading text as it applies to the general exam for the computer-based test. Okay, I kind of said that kind of funny. We're looking at a reading passage for the computer-based test. The reading passage applies to the general reading exam. Okay, all right. So here we're dealing with a fill-the-blank question, and if in terms of strategy, we know because you've looked at the strategy videos in the general reading section. So I'm not going to go into great detail about the strategy because you can watch those videos to really get a really strong breakdown in terms of strategy. But we know about the fill-the-blank question that it goes in order. So number 1, you're going to find first, then number 2, 3, 4, and 5. We know the key thing with a fill-the-blank question is our answer choice. Our answer choice is going to connect with the language that is located before and after the blank line, right? Sometimes it connects directly to the language after the blank line or blank space. Sometimes it connects to the language before the blank space. But that's how you make it easy. Find the correct matching sentence by using the keywords, and then find the word that connects to the language before or after the blank line. That's how you make this question easy. That's how you go through this question very fast. All right. Now, so I know it goes in order. So in this first one, we're talking about accident protection, and it's something among similar companies, right? So this company's accident protection is comparing it to other companies. All right. The program excludes a certain employee. All right. A partner is not automatically something for the insurance. This next one's about part-timers, the coverage for part-timers, and is related to their number of. And employees can send in a blank. What can they send for extra insurance? What can they send? All right, now keep in mind, they're going to use synonym language, right? They're going to use synonym language, so you want to be aware of that. Okay, so here we have in this first one, we actually see the first one right here, city media, accident insurance, accident protection, and in the industry. In the industry is synonym for other companies. All right, so what do they say? City media is pleased to offer employees accident insurance benefits which are unique in the industry. Unique in the industry. Unique among similar companies. That means what we can do is highlight that word, Control C, and then Control V, and paste it right there. That's how you eliminate spelling mistakes. Right? Number 2, the program excludes to a certain type of employee. All right. Nothing about employee. Now, here we see the word partner. We see the word partner right here, but I know that can't be for number 3 because because number 2 is not here. Number 2 has to come before number 3. Okay, so I have to find something about excluding employees. All right, here we go right here. Same for all employees. Okay, but I'm looking for exclusion. However, so we have the word employee, all right, and temporary staff, which is also another word for employee. But I have to find language. I have to find language that matches exclude. And there it is right there. Media, at this time, city media does not extend. They do not extend the insurance to temporary staff. Right? That means it does what? It excludes temporary staff. So temporary staff, Control C, Control V, paste it in there. Now, when you're cutting and pasting, double check the word, double check that you have cut and pasted the entire word or words. Now, look at what I just put here. I put temporary staff. Now, if I put temporary staff, is that going to be correct or incorrect? Right? Is that going to be correct or incorrect? It's going to be what? Incorrect. Why would it be incorrect? Because the directions say one word only. So I have to eliminate the word staff because the word staff means the same as employees. But if I put 2 words as my answer choice, I will be marked wrong. My answer is incorrect because I did not put an answer choice that is in alignment with the directions. All right, now I found number 2 right here. Number 2 is right here. So now I have to find something about partners. And coverage for a partner is not automatically. Okay. This doesn't say anything that they don't get automatically. I think my answer is right here. Submission and review of an application to the insurance company will determine whether the partner is eligible to participate. All right, so they're not automatic. Their application has to be reviewed. It has to be reviewed if they are what? Eligible to participate, right? So when you look at that sentence, This one's probably a little bit more difficult when you look at this sentence. So an employee's partner is not automatically what? He's not automatically what? He's not automatically eligible. Oh, that is not it. Eligible. No, I said that correctly. Eligible. All right, now on your test, it's not going to correct your spelling, okay? My computer has something embedded where it corrects, says when the word is spelled wrong, and I don't know how to turn it off within the browser. But on your exam, the spell check is turned off completely because you're using their program, and they have it completely turned off, right? So it's not going to tell you when something is spelled incorrectly. The coverage for part-timers is related to what? All right, so here we go with part-time employees. It's related to their, all right, defined as those scheduled to work less than 40 hours a week will also be offered accident protection, but the amount of the coverage depends on the hours, right? Depends on, it means related to, depends on the hours they work. So it depends on the number of hours. All right, so employees can send a blank for extra insurance. All right, so that's going to be right here. So what can they send? Our answer choice is right here. They can, additional insurance is optional, blah, blah, blah. Anyone who's interested can submit a request. Submit is synonym for what? Send. That means the answer is going to be request. Right? Okay, so that's how we do a fill the blank question. That's how you can, select an answer directly from the text and copy and paste directly into the text. So that's how you're able to do that and manage it. And I hope this has been a helpful lecture. Thanks a lot. Take care. Talk to you soon. Hi there. In this next video,
So we will continue this computer-based how to perform the read part. We have a couple of more videos. I think let's complete this first and then move. I was thinking not to take it. Maybe we can continue this part tomorrow, and let's start with our writing task 2. Because we have a lot to cover in these 2 days, right? So we just have 2 more days after this. So let's start with task. Okay, I'm going back to.
now that we have completed the IELTS Task 1 section of our course, it's now time to move into IELTS Task 2, which is a standard Task 2. So let's get started. First of all, it's very important for you to understand what we're going to cover in this section of our course. We're going to start off with an introduction, which is what you're listening to right now. Afterwards, we're going to really get into a scoring analysis. This is a really, really important part of this course section. Many students want to know, how can I move my score from a 5 to a 7.5, or really a 5 to a 6.5, a 7 to an 8, an 8 to a 9? In the scoring analysis, I'm going to tell you exactly how to do that. After the scoring analysis, we'll get into the question analysis. In this lecture, we're going to really explain to you how to understand a question properly. When you're answering the question, what are all of the elements that you need to address? This is going to really help you with getting a really high task achievement, task development score. And then we're going to get into outlining essay questions, thesis statements, writing a complete introduction, writing topic sentences, writing body paragraphs, conclusions, and then you're going to get some live timed essay examples where I'm going to be writing an essay in real time so you can see how it's all put together. So for the IELTS exam, there are 2 question types that you have. For task number 1, if you're doing the academic exam, it's going to be a chart or a report or possibly a map or a process. If you're doing the general exam, you're going to have to write a letter, and that could be a formal or informal type of letter. Now, task number 2 is the standard essay, and that's what we're getting into here, the standard essay. This is where you have to prove your ability to write the standard essay that they teach in almost every ESL school around the world. You have to write in a way that's measured up to the standards that the examiners expect when giving a student a score of 7+. So, what is a standard English-based essay? let's just start with the foundation. What is a standard essay? It's a piece of writing that is used to convince someone of a position that you're going to take. You must use a certain level of reasoning and evidence to score very, very well. In order for the reader to be convinced, you have to follow a certain logical pattern. There's certain components that you must include when writing a standard English-based essay. Now, of course, I'm going to tell you what those components are, and I'm going to give you examples of each of those components. The examiner wants you to write a 4 to 5 paragraph essay. So there are many, many types of questions on the IELTS exam, many, many types of questions. And they all revolve around the same theme of argumentation. They're just different ways of phrasing it or stating it. But for every single question, you're giving your opinion. So, of course, you have the agree or disagree question. And sometimes this is phrased as just a direct agree or disagree. And then at other times, it will be, to what extent do you agree or disagree? Then we have a discuss both sides question, opinion questions, 2 questions embedded. That means that when you have the essay question, they'll have 2 separate questions within it. They may ask you whether something is positive or negative as one question, and then in another question, they will next to that question or right after that question, they'll have a separate question that is asking something different. Then you have a preference question where you have to choose one out of a list, or you may have a paired choice where you have to choose between 2. And also be aware that it's possible to have a question where you have to choose from 3 or 4 items. That was something that they used to do on the exam a long time ago, but be aware because anything they've done in the past, they can bring up again. Then we have the advantage, disadvantage question, and that can be worded many different ways. It can just be discuss the advantages and disadvantages. It can be discuss the advantages and disadvantages and give your opinion, or it could be compare the advantages and disadvantages. Then we have the cause solution question or problem solution question. So these are all of the different question types that you could possibly have to address on the IELTS exam. Now, the good thing for you is that I teach one method, one strategy to address all of the questions. There's no separate writing strategy or writing structure for a problem solution question. They all are going to use the same structure, the same strategy. All right, so there's something that I really want you to understand about essay writing, and that's any essay, any standard essay is basically written like an inverted pyramid. And that's a very important concept to understand when you're trying to mentally imagine what an essay should be written like. So when you look at an essay from the overall global perspective of an essay, just look at the shape of how it's written mentally, because on paper it looks like the same shape, but really it's not. The introduction is more general. So it's like the wide base of the pyramid. And then when you get to the body paragraphs, it narrows down a little bit more. It narrows down just a little bit more. And then when you finally get to the conclusion, it all comes down to a point. When you look at the introduction and the body paragraphs, it's the exact same inverted pyramid shape. With an introduction, you start off with a general statement related to the topic. Then you move down and you narrow it into the specific question that's being asked. And then you wrap things up with a thesis statement. With a body paragraph, it's the exact same inverted pyramid style of writing. You start off with the topic sentence, and then it focuses down into the details, and then a more specific example or explanation of the detail. And then it might wrap up with a concluding sentence for that paragraph. And then for the overall essay, of course, you conclude with a overall conclusion for the essay itself. But that's really what essay writing is. And so you have to think about that. When you're looking at your introduction, is your introduction being written like an inverted pyramid? Are your body paragraphs being written like an inverted pyramid? That's what creates the type of writing that scores very well. So here's our 35-minute, 6-step writing strategy. We have 6 easy steps to follow for you to be able to write the type of essay that's going to score very well. Number 1, you have 2 minutes to analyze the question. This is a critical step, a very important step. This makes sure that you're going to answer all the parts of the question and that you answer it accurately. Number 2, outline the question. After you understand what you have to write because you've analyzed the question, now it's time to do an outline. And I need for you to be able to do your outline in less than 5 minutes. Then we're going to move to step number 3, writing the introduction. The introduction should be written in 5 minutes. There are 3 parts to an introduction: the general idea, paraphrasing the question, and then your thesis statement. Then we have steps 4 and 5, which are your body paragraphs. Each body paragraph, you have 10 minutes to write each body paragraph. And then finally, we're going to wrap things up with the conclusion, which involves your restating your thesis statement and making any possible future recommendation for the reader. So these 6 steps encompass what I want you to do in terms of your writing process itself. Now, you're going to hear me later on talk about, in terms of the introduction and the body paragraphs, that it is possible for you to write your body paragraphs before you write the introduction. Some people like to do it that way because really the body paragraphs are the heart of the score. That's where most of your points come from, the body paragraphs themselves. Also, by writing the body paragraphs first, some people feel like, they'll have a better understanding of their essay and they can write the introduction faster. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But these are our 6 foundational steps to writing a 35-minute essay. And I always want you writing in 35 minutes. I know that you basically have 40 minutes to do it. But if you finish in 35 minutes, that's going to give you 5 minutes to go ahead and really edit and improve your essay. What happens to a lot of students is they write right up to the 40-minute mark, and then they have no time for improving the essay. I want you to have 5 strong minutes to really improve and edit that essay. Take some of those simple sentences and form compound sentences. Include an adjective clause. find synonyms for some of your vocabulary. You need time to do that. Correct mistakes, right? You need that extra 5 minutes. All right, thank you very much. This completes part number 1 of the introduction. Coming up next, we will complete the introduction with part number 2, and then we're going to go ahead and move forward with how to outline essay questions. Thanks a lot. I'll talk to you soon. Now that you have completed the IELTS Task 1 section of our course, it's now time to move into IELTS Task 2, which is a standard essay. In this lecture, I'm going to provide you the basic information of IELTS Task 2. So let's get started. First of all, it's very important for you to understand what we're going to cover in this section of our course. We're going to start off with an introduction, which is what you're listening to right now. Afterwards, we're going to really get into a scoring analysis. This is a really, really important part of this course section. Many students want to know, how can I move my score from a 5 to a 7.5, or really a 5 to a 6.5, a 7 to an 8, an 8 to a 9? In the scoring analysis, I'm going to tell you exactly how to do that. After the scoring analysis, we'll get into the question analysis. In this lecture, we're going to really explain to you how to understand a question properly. When you're answering the question, what are all of the elements that you need to address? This is going to really help you with getting a really high task achievement, task development score. And then we're going to get into outlining essay questions, thesis statements, writing a complete introduction, writing topic sentences, writing body paragraphs, conclusions, and then you're going to get some live timed essay examples where I'm going to be writing an essay in real time so you can see how it's all put together. So for the IELTS exam, there are 2 question types that you have. For task number 1, if you're doing the academic exam, it's going to be a chart or a report, or possibly a map or a process. If you're doing the general exam, you're going to have to write a letter, and that could be a formal or informal type of letter. Now, task number 2 is the standard essay, and that's what we're getting into here, the standard essay. This is where you have to prove your ability to write the standard essay that they teach in almost every ESL school around the world. You have to write in a way that's measured up to the standards that the examiners expect when giving a student a score of 7+. So, what is a standard English-based essay? Let's just start with the foundation. What is a standard essay? It's a piece of writing that is used to convince someone of a position that you're going to take. You must use a certain level of reasoning and evidence to score very, very well. In order for the reader to be convinced, you have to follow a certain logical pattern. There's certain components that you must include when writing a standard English-based essay. Now, of course, I'm going to tell you what those components are, and I'm going to give you examples of each of those components. The examiner wants you to write a 4 to 5 paragraph essay. So there are many, many types of questions on the IELTS exam, many, many types of questions. And they all revolve around the same theme of argumentation. They're just different ways of phrasing it or stating it. But for every single question, you're giving your opinion. So, of course, you have the agree or disagree question. And sometimes this is phrased as just a direct agree or disagree. And then at other times, it will be, to what extent do you agree or disagree? Then we have a discuss both sides question, opinion questions, 2 questions embedded. That means that when you have the essay question, they'll have 2 separate questions within it. They may ask you whether something is positive or negative as one question, and then in another question, they will next to that question or right after that question, they'll have a separate question that is asking something different. Then you have a preference question where you have to choose one out of a list, or you may have a paired choice where you have to choose between 2. And also be aware that it's possible to have a question where you have to choose from 3 or 4 items. That was something that they used to do on the exam a long time ago, but be aware because anything they've done in the past, they can bring up again. Then we have the advantage, disadvantage question, and that can be worded many different ways. It can just be discuss the advantages and disadvantages. It can be discuss the advantages and disadvantages and give your opinion, or it could be compare the advantages and disadvantages. Then we have the cause solution question or problem solution question. So these are all of the different question types that you could possibly have to address on the IELTS exam. Now, the good thing for you is that I teach one method, one strategy to address all of the questions. There's no separate writing strategy or writing structure for a problem solution question. They all are going to use the same structure, the same strategy. All right, so there's something that I really want you to understand about essay writing, and that's any essay, any standard essay is basically written like an inverted pyramid. And that's a very important concept to understand when you're trying to mentally imagine what an essay should be written like. So when you look at an essay from the overall global perspective of an essay, just look at the shape of how it's written mentally, because on paper it looks like the same shape, but really it's not. The introduction is more general. So it's like the wide base of the pyramid. And then when you get to the body paragraphs, it narrows down a little bit more. It narrows down just a little bit more. And then when you finally get to the conclusion, it all comes down to a point. When you look at the introduction and the body paragraphs, it's the exact same inverted pyramid shape. With an introduction, you start off with a general statement related to the topic. Then you move down and you narrow it into the specific question that's being asked. And then you wrap things up with a thesis statement. With a body paragraph, it's the exact same inverted pyramid style of writing. You start off with the topic sentence, and then it focuses down into the details, and then a more specific example or explanation of the detail. And then it might wrap up with a concluding sentence for that paragraph. And then for the overall essay, of course, you conclude with a overall conclusion for the essay itself. But that's really what essay writing is. And so you have to think about that. When you're looking at your introduction, is your introduction being written like an inverted pyramid? Are your body paragraphs being written like an inverted pyramid? That's what creates the type of writing that scores very well. So here's our 35-minute, 6-step writing strategy. We have 6 easy steps to follow for you to be able to write the type of essay that's going to score very well. Number 1, you have 2 minutes to analyze the question. This is a critical step, a very important step. This makes sure that you're going to answer all the parts of the question and that you answer it accurately. Number 2, outline the question. After you understand what you have to write because you've analyzed the question, now it's time to do an outline. And I need for you to be able to do your outline in less than 5 minutes. Then we're going to move to step number 3, writing the introduction. The introduction should be written in 5 minutes. There are 3 parts to an introduction: the general idea, paraphrasing the question, and then your thesis statement. Then we have steps 4 and 5, which are your body paragraphs. Each body paragraph, you have 10 minutes to write each body paragraph. And then finally, we're going to wrap things up with the conclusion, which involves your restating your thesis statement and making any possible future recommendation for the reader. So these 6 steps encompass what I want you to do in terms of your writing process itself. Now, you're going to hear me later on talk about, in terms of the introduction and the body paragraphs, that it is possible for you to write your body paragraphs before you write the introduction. Some people like to do it that way because really the body paragraphs are the heart of the score. That's where most of your points come from, the body paragraphs themselves. Also, by writing the body paragraphs first, some people feel like, they'll have a better understanding of their essay and they can write the introduction faster. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But these are our 6 foundational steps to writing a 35-minute essay. And I always want you writing in 35 minutes. I know that you basically have 40 minutes to do it. But if you finish in 35 minutes, that's going to give you 5 minutes to go ahead and really edit and improve your essay. What happens to a lot of students is they write right up to the 40-minute mark, and then they have no time for improving the essay. I want you to have 5 strong minutes to really improve and edit that essay. Take some of those simple sentences and form compound sentences. Include an adjective clause. Find synonyms for some of your vocabulary. You need time to do that. Correct mistakes, right? You need that extra 5 minutes. All right, thank you very much. This completes part number 1 of the introduction. Coming up next, we will complete the introduction with part number 2, and then we're going to go ahead and move forward with how to outline essay questions. Thanks a lot. I'll talk to you soon. As your instructor, these next few lectures are really, really important. I can't stress enough how important it is for all students to understand the scoring rubric for IELTS Task 2. All of you want to improve on the rubric. You want to move your score from a 6 to a 7, 7 to 8, or even 8 to 9. In order to do that, you have to truly understand the scoring rubric. If you're not doing the things that fit within a category of an 8, you're not going to get an 8. And so it's really, really critical that these next 2 lectures, you really pay attention very well and implement these suggestions. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, let's look at the overall scoring criteria. Now, I know on the standard public version of the rubric, they're going to tell you that you have these 4 categories, which are task development, coherence and cohesion, lexical ability, and grammar, range, and accuracy. Now, yes, those are the 4 standard categories that they have on the rubric, but really, to be honest with you, those categories are really broken up into these 6 different areas. And despite what they tell you, they really are looking at, in terms of privately, when they're scoring you, they're looking at all of these 6 areas when really considering what grade to give you. There's a public version of the rubric, and there's a private version that you're not able to see. So in terms of all of the scoring criteria that are considered, they're looking at your content, And here, they're going to determine it by looking at the aspects of how you address the response. Do you provide specific details, specific examples? Do you have great explanations that are supporting your point of view? Next, of course, it's an essay, so they're looking at unity and coherence. Not just coherence, but they also are looking at unity. Unity means oneness, which means every paragraph is about one idea. And when it comes to coherence, they're talking about the fact of your sentences really sticking together. A body paragraph and a conclusion, those paragraphs should be very, very sticky. What that means is that all of the sentences are just connected together, right? They can't just go in any type of order. Then, of course, we're looking at development and progression. Development and progression. And here, we're talking about the way in which you explain and support the topic sentence. Within a body paragraph, are you explaining, supporting, developing the point of view that's based on your topic sentence? That's what counts towards development and also progression. Of course, grammar is grammar. But what they're looking at here is the level of the grammar that you're using and the range of grammar. So if you're only able to write simple sentences perfectly, then your grammar score is going to fit between a 5 and a 6. If you're able to construct compound sentences and complex sentences, but you're making mistakes while doing that, by either leaving off commas before the conjunctions, or you are just writing your complex sentences in a way where you are creating sentence fragments, then your grammar score is probably going to be a 6. Because you attempted to do an advanced level grammar sentence, but you weren't able to do it correctly. And then if you're moving up into a 7 or 8, that means that you're able to construct all those sentences mistake-free. Next, we look at the linguistic range. Again, this is not on your public version of the rubric. We're looking at your linguistic range. And here we're talking about the precision of your ideas. Is what you're writing, does it accurately and precisely convey the idea or point of view that you've made in your thesis statement and your topic sentences? And then finally, vocabulary. And included within vocabulary, of course, is spelling. Here, of course, they're looking at if you have a broad range of vocabulary, are you able to use subject-specific words? Can you paraphrase and use synonym language? And then your spelling should be close to perfect if you really are planning on moving your rubric score from 6 to 7, 7 to 8, so forth and so on. Okay, now here we're going to take a look at the 4 basic categories that you're going to see on the public version of the rubric. And we're talking about task development, coherence and cohesion, lexical resource, and grammar. That's what you're going to see on the public version of the rubric. However, in the previous screen, I really broke that down for you in terms of all the different scoring criteria that make up task development, coherence and cohesion, lexical resource, and grammar. And so here's what every student wants to do. They want to get out of a band 6. Most of you are stuck in a band 6 or stuck in a band 7. These are just some general things you need to do. These are the fastest changes you can implement to be able to get out of that band 6 or get out of that band 7. Number 1, write mistake-free sentences. Examiners love mistake-free sentences. They hate or dislike when they see 3 or 4 mistakes in every single sentence. It doesn't matter how great your ideas are. If you're making these word form, word choice, spelling, grammatical mistakes in every single sentence, it destroys 3 aspects of your grading rubric. It destroys the coherence and cohesion, vocabulary, and grammar. So if you can write mistake-free sentences, you're going to help yourself achieve the mark that you want. Next, do not make the mistake of topic writing. You want to be able to question answer. And that's really important to understand. Don't write the topic, right? Most students are topic writing and not question answering. So for example, if the topic of the question is dealing with social media, and then a student will write an essay that's just generally talking about why they like social media or how important social media is for the world. But the specific question is, how does social media impact relationships at work? That's the specific question. But instead of answering the specific question, the student is just talking about the topic. You cannot do that. That's why question analysis, understanding the question, is so important. And then number 3, improper sentence structures ruin a score. If you want to be able to get out of a band 6, you want to have proper sentence structure. That means complex sentences are written according to standard. The same for compound sentences, conditional sentences, sentences that use a correlative conjunction. You have to write these things correctly, perfectly, in terms of the structure. If you're not doing that, you're not going to get out of a band 6. Now, let's talk about task development in terms of understanding the differences between scores of 5 to 8. If you look at this chart, or look at these 4 boxes here, you'll see what is considered an 8, a 7, a 6, and a 5. You can see when it comes to an 8, you are sufficiently, not fully, because if you're fully doing it, that's a 9. You're sufficiently addressing all the parts. You're presenting well-developed responses. Now, when it comes to a 7, what differentiates a 7 from an 8 is that you may have a tendency to overgeneralize, which means that you're using a lot of general vocabulary, or you're doing what I said before, writing about the topic and not actually answering the question. Also, sometimes the supporting ideas lack focus. What does that mean? That means that within your body paragraphs, your details are not specifically related to your topic sentence, or your topic sentences are not supporting the thesis statement. For a 6, it breaks down more, where they're talking about you're being more repetitive in your language, or more repetitive in your ideas, they're unclear. right? Your main ideas are inadequate or not really developed. And then, of course, from a 4 or 5, it drops down anymore. It drops down even more. The format is not correct. Your paragraphing is incorrect. Your development is unclear. You have to understand when you're getting that 5 or that 6 or 7, you have to understand, what do I need to do to move from one section to the other? And in the lecture that follows this, I'm going to actually break down for you how to do that. For coherence and cohesion, the same idea. We can see the differences between an 8, 7, 6, and 5. Now, I only cover 8, 7, 6, and 5 because these are the scores that probably 95% of students are getting. If you look at an 8, I do put in parentheses down there that in terms of a 9, the difference is dealing with having very skillful paragraphing. That deals with linking your paragraphs together, using cohesive devices to do that. Also, what's really important here is they're talking about for 9, there's no cohesion attraction. One big mistake that students make in regards to cohesion is they think that every single sentence needs to start with one of those cohesive devices. First, second, third, finally, moreover, also, furthermore, over and over and over again. That's what they don't want you to overuse your cohesive devices. You're not supposed to do that. That's stopping you from getting a 7. It's almost like you're using those cohesive devices to say, look, 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 and now I'm using also, and now look, I'm using furthermore, and now look at me now, I'm using moreover. Give me a point. And actually what you're doing is you're taking away from your score. Now, when it comes to lexical range and accuracy, right, I know on the rubric it's called lexical resource, but really is lexical range. It's the range of your lexical ability and the accuracy of your lexical ability. They don't always call things or label items that really explain what they are. And so for an 8, we're talking about using uncommon lexical items. In the following lecture, I'm going to really explain that a little bit more so you understand what that means. Also, one thing to really stop students, because a lot of my students are students that are getting a 7, and they come to me so they can move from a 7 to an 8 or an 8 to a 9. And one mistake that they're making is with their collocations. Your collocations within the essay must be correctly connected together. Very often students put together word combinations that stop them from moving from a 7 to an 8. And so you have to really, really watch for that. In terms of those of you who are at a 6, it's because your range of vocabulary is adequate. That means it's not great, it's not good, it's just adequate. That means that you are most likely repeating most of the same words, or that your vocabulary that you're using a lot of basic level words, get, help, using a lot of be verbs, is, are, was, were. A lot of that language is really just an adequate range. In addition, you're making mistakes with your word formation, word order, word formation. And then, of course, the 5, we're really dealing with when you're making a lot of errors in vocabulary, in spelling, word formation, a lot of errors. There's errors in every single sentence. Now, in regards to the grammar, range, and accuracy, with your grammar, to be able to get an 8, the majority of your sentences must be error-free. I'll say it one more time. The majority, not some, not 1, 2, or 3. Typically in an essay, you're going to have about 15 sentences, right? 13 to 15 sentences, that's all. 3 sentences in the introduction, 10 sentences between the 2 body paragraphs, and then 2 or 3 sentences for a conclusion. That means a total of about roughly 15 sentences. Sometimes 16, 17, depends on the level that you're writing. If you're writing very concisely and using a lot of high-level sentences, compounded complex sentences, you might have less in terms of your sentences, but you'll score a lot better. But if the majority of your sentences are not error-free, and you're not going to get that 8, you're only allowed to make just occasional errors. Now, if you look at a 7, it says produces frequent error-free sentences. There's a difference between frequent and majority. Majority, you have to think of majority in this context. Majority is really talking about 80 to 90% error-free. When we're talking about frequent, you're talking probably maybe about 75 to 80% in terms of being error-free. And so you should be able to really look at your essay and determine what percentage of your sentences are completely error-free. I mean, absolutely 0 mistakes. Now, if you're getting a 5 in your grammar, that means that your sentence, you're only really doing simple sentences correctly. You're trying to compound and complex sentences, but you're making mistakes in doing it. And you're making also just grammatical mistakes in verb tense, subject-verb agreement, all of those basic level foundation mistakes. That's what you have to avoid. All right, so thank you very, very much. I really appreciate you joining me. And in the next lecture, we're going to move into really getting some advice, me giving you some advice about how you can move up the rubric scale. You now understand the categories, but the real question is, what do I need to do? Show me what I need to do. And that's what we're going to cover in the next lecture. I'll talk to you soon. Instructor, it's my job to make sure you're getting the best score possible. And in order to do that, you have to really understand the scoring rubric. Everybody wants to be able to move their score up the scale. And in this lecture, I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. When we talk about moving up the scale, everybody is normally stuck at a certain score. Some of you have taken the exam 3, 4, 5 times. and you keep getting the exact same score. What that means is you are not able to move your score from one rubric box to a higher rubric box. To be able to do that, you have to have strategies, tactics, tips to be able to really, really do that very well. So the reason why I created this lecture was so that you know exactly what you need to do when you're practicing to be able to really move up that scale. The first aspect we're going to consider deals with content, development, and unity. All of these are related, so I talk about them together. First, when it comes to content, we should think about these 5 factors. Number 1, introductions. Introductions affect the content and development of your essay. A lot of students just blow it off, and they think the introduction is not really important. But the introduction contains the most important sentence of all, the thesis statement. Number 2, relevant information. If you are having a lot of digression in your essay, which means you're going outside of the thesis statement, going outside of the essay question, you are damaging your content, development, and unity. Number 3, you must be able to extend your answers. You cannot serial list details. You have to be able to explain the detail. How does it support the topic sentence position? How does it support the overall thesis statement? Number 4, topic sentences. Topic sentences have a dual role. They support the thesis statement and they control the idea of the paragraph. If you don't have properly written topic sentences, you are destroying your score. And finally, number 5, balance. Many of these questions have multiple parts, and you need to address each part of a question with balance. If you implement these 5 criteria, you're going to improve your content and development score by leaps and bounds. Some other things to consider in terms of content and development: give fully developed responses, connect your examples. If you don't connect your examples, and what I mean by that is people sometimes just give an example without truly explaining how that example supports or answers the question, or the example does not support the detail. If you want to improve, go back and look at some of your old essays. Make sure that you check the topic sentences and the details in your paragraphs. Do the details support the topic sentence? Also, think of sentence functionality. When you're in practice mode, right? Not necessarily, doing time testing right now, but really just in practice mode, learning to write better. Think about sentence functionality. What are the sentences in that paragraph doing? What's the purpose of that sentence? What is that sentence doing there? Why is it there? And then another great idea is to always refer back to your outline while you're writing. Constantly looking back at your outline while you're writing keeps you focused. It allows for your mind to not drift off in another direction that destroys the unity and the coherence of your essays. So unity, what does it mean? Right? Unity is so important. Unity deals with your body paragraphs being about one idea. So what I want you to do is look at these 2 paragraphs. Right? The following paragraph lacks unity. Right? If you look at the topic sentence tells us that this paragraph is about human benefits. That's the controlling idea. This is what I see people do in a lot of their essays. The topic sentence is about human benefits. That means everything in that paragraph must be about human benefits. But then the student goes ahead and writes about trees, providing animals with benefits, and discusses how animals need to have a place to live. You have just created massive incoherence. There's no unity here because half of the paragraph is unrelated to the controlling idea. That's why knowing how to write topic sentences is so important. Knowing how to write thesis statements is so important. Now here's a more unified version of the paragraph. Here you can see that all of the sentences are related to the controlling idea of human benefits. Everything's related to the controlling idea. That's how you have great unity. Now let's talk about development. What does development mean? Well, when it comes to development, look at these paragraphs here. This paragraph lacks development. The student here wrote a topic sentence, then detail 1, then detail 2. You might look at that and say, yeah, that's a good paragraph. But that's a 6. That's a 6. That's a 5.5 or 6. Here is a more developed version. Here you can see a topic sentence, detail number 1, explaining or expanding detail number 1, then detail number 2, and we're expanding or explaining detail number 2. That's what it means to develop, right? That's what it means to develop. If you're not doing that, you're not going to move up the rubric scale. Now let's look more specifically at coherence and cohesion to improve your score. Number 1, are your sentences comprehensible? When you have very bad word order or sentence structure, it makes it difficult to understand what you're trying to say. If an examiner like myself has to read what you're saying, 2 or 3 times, I have to read what you're saying 2 or 3 times, right? You really have a comprehensibility problem. Having a plan helps coherence, that deals with outlining. Number 3, logic. There should be a logical order to your writing. There should be an obvious and apparent connection between your ideas. And then another great tool to improve your coherence and cohesion is called concept mapping. Concept mapping deals with doing a reverse outline. And with a reverse outline, that means really the best way to do this, go back and look at some of the old essays that you've written. And from the essay that's already written, try to reverse engineer an outline and see if it's really a coherent outline. That will help you to be able to look at yourself and what you're doing. Now let's talk about linguistic range. Yes, I know you don't see that on your rubric, but it's there. It's a part of the scoring. In terms of your linguistic range, precision, right? Precision. Don't write with general words. Be very precise in your vocabulary. Eliminate any ambiguity, right? The examiner should not have to address how or why. Why did he say that? How is that important? How is that connected with answering the question? Sequencing is important. Ideas go from general to specific. And then to repeat the precision that I stated in number 1, be accurate. Do you want to sound amazing with big, ridiculous words, or do you want to communicate clearly? Very often, students want to, quote, sound amazing. I'm going to sound amazing with this really big word. And they end up sounding ridiculous because it's completely out of context and makes no sense for being there. That's not how you improve your score. You improve your score by using great word combinations, 3 or 4 vocabulary words that are stringed together properly, which equals having really good collocations. Now here is some more information about what do I mean by precision. Linguistic range, right? Small range, I was very tired after the match. Higher range, I was exhausted after the match. Exhausted is more precise. Small range, Kofi walked slowly along the road, swinging his school bag. Higher range, Kofi strolled along the road. That's much more precise. When I say somebody's walked slowly, that's very general. Strolling gives a completely different picture, and it's much more precise. Small range, we had a nice evening with our friends. Higher range, we had a pleasant evening with our friends. When we're talking about linguistic range, we're talking about precision. Now let's move forward and talk about vocabulary or lexical ability and improving your score. When it comes to your vocabulary, you want to utilize a range of vocabulary. This means that you should not repeat the same words over and over and over again. Paraphrasing, synonyms, collocations increase the score. Some more tips for your vocabulary range: uncommon lexical items or phrases. So language like eye-catching statistic, indicate sustainable development, vast improvement. This is what they're talking about in terms of uncommon lexical items or phrases. They're not talking about, big, ridiculous GRE words that you never use in real life. That's not what they mean. Making sure that your adverb placement is correct is very helpful. And also, improving your lexical range can simply be done by showing the change in word form. Going from the word health, from poor health, in number 3, poor health, and then in the next sentence, shifting to unhealthy. So when we say subject-specific vocabulary and a variety of vocabulary, what does that mean? We could look at the following paragraph and have a really good idea. When you look at this paragraph, the words in red are showing variety or range. Human, shifting the form, humanity, mankind, earthlings. And then this paragraph is talking about human benefits from trees. And then look at all of the specific subject vocabulary about trees: shade, bark, trunk, branches, arborists, types of trees, sap. That's all considered subject-specific vocabulary. Now, some of you may be asking me, or some of you may say to yourself or say to me, I don't know anything. I don't have a lot of vocabulary. Well, you have to read more, right? Stop watching TV. Stop watching movies. Read. Read. The more you read, the better vocabulary you're going to have. Watching TV, watching movies is not really the best way to improve your vocabulary, your subject-specific vocabulary, right? That comes from reading. Now let's talk about grammar, range, and accuracy and improving your score. You want to be able to master all of these sentence types: simple, compound, complex, compound, complex. Always use the proper verb tense, right? And then you have to work, this is what's really important here. You have to work at breaking the habits, breaking bad habits. Very often I see students make the same mistake over and over and over again. And somehow they magically think that if I just keep on writing essays, 20 essays, 30 essays, I just keep on doing it, I'll get better. No, that's not how you get better. You get better by breaking bad habits. That means taking one essay and working the heck out of that one essay, correcting and breaking bad habits. You've heard me say before, a great tool to use is the premium version of Grammarly. There are other grammar applications like White Smoke and others, pro writing, but my favorite one is Grammarly. www.grammarly.com is a great tool for those that are trying to improve your grammar and you need a grammar coach. But again, like I said, the premium version, they have a free version, but the premium version is really for those that are preparing for this exam because it will correct all of your grammar mistakes and it will tell you exactly what you need to do to make the correction. Then you make those corrections, then you write the whole thing over again and see if you can write it on your own without making those exact same mistakes. And then you just keep doing it and keep working it until you stop making the same mistakes over and over and over again. Right? You can go ahead and pause the lecture right here if you want to really get a good idea on the 4 different sentence types, your simple, compound, complex, and your compound complex. There's some great videos by Khan Academy on YouTube, and they really break these down even more for you. You've heard me say before, you can improve yourself, improve your score by writing mistake-free sentences. The majority of your sentences should be mistake-free. Avoid those run-on and fragment sentences that happen many times when students start sentences with "and," or they are writing complex sentences and putting a period after the dependent clause. This is just a short little explanation about changing parts of speech, fluctuating slightly to slight fluctuation. That really impresses them in terms of the grammar, and also probably even more so for vocabulary. And then, of course, parallelism. Parallelism is really important. A lot of students mess up with their parallel writing within their sentences. Like here's an example of a sentence that has poor parallelism. Successful people tend to plan their day, working long hours, and they never give up. That's really bad. It should be successful people tend to plan their day, work long hours, and never give up. That is consistent. That's the way you have to write it. Prepositional phrases are sometimes very helpful in terms of writing. Since the beginning, that's a prepositional phrase. After the next decade, prepositional phrase. With regards to, with this in mind. All of those are types of phrases that show more range in your grammar. All right, so thank you so much. I hope this information was helpful. Coming up next, we're going to get into the question analysis, and then we're going to move into outlining essay questions. It's been a pleasure teaching you. I'm happy to be helping you as you move along on your journey in getting that great IELTS score. Take care. I'll talk to you. Thank you for continuing your journey with us in task 2 of the writing section. Right now, we're going to cover a topic which is question analysis. So, we need to understand the problem. Students very often mess up their score for two main reasons before the writing process starts. One is question analysis, and the other is outlining. When a student fails to do a proper question analysis and fails to do a fundamental outline before starting the writing process, that often results in low scores on the rubric in terms of task development and coherence. Doing a proper analysis is critical to scoring well. So that's what I'm going to cover in this particular lecture. So when it comes to question analysis, in this lecture section, we're going to talk about reasons why students get poor essay scores. What does it mean when a person tells you to read a question carefully? The question analysis process, and then giving you an opportunity to practice question analysis. So some reasons why students get really low scores. Number one, failing to take the time to read the question, or in other words, failing to take time to analyze the question, to do a proper analysis of the question. Number two, your writing focus is about the general topic of the question and not the limiting language. Writing about the wrong question type. And number four, not recognizing the question restriction or not recognizing the limiting language of an essay question. Every essay question has limiting language, has restricting language. They're never going to tell you, write an essay about the internet, right? It will be some specific aspect of the internet, social media, giving information online, privacy, criminality, some specific aspect of the internet, not the general topic of the internet. So when you look at a question, you need to understand the question restriction. So let's talk about just the concept of question analysis. When you write an essay, when you answer a question, you must demonstrate understanding. Understanding is what relates to task development and task achievement. So to do that, you need to correctly identify the focus of the question. You must deal with that focus consistently with throughout the entire essay that you're writing. You must answer that question. Examiners complain all the time that students don't answer the question. They only answer parts of it, or they talk about it in a very general way. So question analysis is critical. So let's talk about the process. And on the exam, you would mentally do this question analysis process. However, you can also write it down on your note paper or whatever. I like to write it down because having it in front of me allows for me to stay focused and stay inside the box of the question. So a basic question analysis involves three parts. Number one, what is the general essay topic, the macro topic? Number two, what is the restrictive limiting keyword, or what are the restrictive limiting keywords in a question? That's the micro topic. Like I talked about before, the internet might be the macro topic. Giving or providing personal information online could be the micro topic, the limiting language. And lastly, part three, a basic question analysis involves recognizing the instruction or direction words. Agree or disagree. Discuss both sides. Advantages or disadvantages. Problem or solution. Now, for this class, we're going to talk about two other aspects of question analysis, and that involves the question parts, because often on the exam, students mess up how many parts are to a question. A question can have one part, two parts, three parts, and when you don't write about all parts of the question, that really messes up your score. Also, we're going to discuss how students mess up or confuse answering a question. I think it's really important for you to look at and for us to examine what are different ways that students mess up the question so that you don't make those same mistakes. So here's an example of two questions we have here. Some people think that being creative during your time off is helpful. Discuss the advantages and disadvantages of this and give your opinion. Right? Also, we're looking at how do students mess up answering this question. The second question is, some people believe that to reduce industrial pollution, a tax should be imposed on companies, while others believe that different measures should be taken to solve the problem. Discuss both sides and give your opinion. So this is what a proper analysis would look like. For the first question, the general essay topic is free time. What do you do during free time? The restriction, being creative. The instruction or direction words are advantage, disadvantage, opinion. This has three parts. For our second question, the general topic is pollution. That's the macro topic. Now we have our restricting language about pollution. We're talking about reduction, industrial, pollution, tax, companies, and other solutions, other measures. Our instruction or direction word does both in opinion. Again, three parts. Finally, how do students mess up answering the question? For our first one way is by discussing something other than being creative during free time. You are limited to only talking about the advantages, disadvantages, and your opinion about being creative during your free time. If you talk about any other thing, any other aspect other than being creative, you are wrong. For our second one way that students mess up is by not discussing both sides in a balanced way. In addition, and I've seen this many times before, talking about pollution outside of an industrial pollution context. The question is clearly talking about reducing industrial pollution. If you talk about any other type of pollution that's not industrial, you have messed up the question. And finally, failing to clearly expand an opinion. Too many times, I see students writing one-sentence opinions, two-sentence opinions. Give a fully explained opinion if you want to score well. Okay, so coming up next, we're going to go ahead and move through some question analysis practice. This is a practice opportunity for you. We're going to do this in this lecture. I'm going to show you the question, and then you're going to do an analysis, and you should try to talk about or write down how you think a student would mess up the question. So let's get started. Okay, so here is practice 1. Our first question in red: some people think that government should increase the cost of fuel for cars and other vehicles to solve environmental problems. Do you agree or disagree? Our second question: we can access information from the internet easily. Some people say that libraries are no longer necessary. To what extent do you agree or disagree? So I want you to pause the lecture, get out a timer, set that timer for maybe a minute, and try to answer all parts of the analysis. So pause the lecture now before I go to the next screen and give you the results. Okay, so let's look at the analysis. For our first question in red, the general essay topic is about the environment. The restrictive or limiting words relates to government increasing fuel costs to solve the problem. Our direction words are agree or disagree, and we have one part. We only have one part because either you agree or disagree, not both. If you agree, your entire essay is about why you agree. If you disagree, your entire essay is about why you disagree. For our second question, the general essay topic, libraries, the restrictive language is that it's not necessary due to the internet. It's not necessary, no longer necessary. Our direction words are to what extent, agree or disagree. This can have 1 to 2 parts because you may mainly agree, but there may be some aspect that you disagree with. So our first question is different than the second question because it uses the language to what extent. So how do students mess up these questions? For the first one in red, the main way students mess up the question is by discussing a solution other than increasing the cost of fuel for cars. You are limited, you are restricted to only talking about that aspect, only writing about that aspect. For our second part, our second question, how do students mess it up? The main way is by having a separate discussion about how we can access the internet more easily. Why is it important to access the internet more easily? What we can find by accessing the internet more easily. That's not what the question is about. The question is about, are libraries necessary still? That's what the question is about. Okay, let's move on to class practice 2. Here are our 2 questions. On the left in red, many people today put personal information online for the needs of daily life. Shopping, banking, social life. Is this a positive or negative development? Question 2. Nowadays, many people choose to be self-employed rather than work for a company or organization. Why might this be the case? What could be the disadvantages of being self-employed? All right, go ahead, stop the lecture, pause for a minute or a minute and 30 seconds, and do your question analysis. Pause the lecture. All right, so for our first question in red, the general topic is online internet. Our restrictive language, sharing personal information for daily life. Direction words, positive or negative, 1 part. Second question, the general essay topic is the work world or employment. The restrictive language is we're only talking about self-employment, choosing self-employment. Our direction words are why is it happening and what are the disadvantages? There are 2 parts here, 2 parts. The first one is 1 part. If it's positive, you only write about it being positive. If it's negative, you only write about it being negative. Now, how do students mess up these questions? The first one in red, the main way is by failing to understand that you must make a clear choice, right? Not positive and negative, make a choice. Another way is by talking about information not related to personal life or daily needs. For our second question, students lower their scores by having some discussion or writing about working for companies or working for organizations or why people work for organizations and companies. That's not the focus of the question. The focus is on the growth of self-employment. Also, you have to make sure that you answer both parts, not just answer why, but also talking about the disadvantages. Talking about the disadvantages. One second question would be having a discussion about advantages. Did they ask you about advantages? No. So you would not write about advantages at all. All right, let's go to class analysis practice 3. Here are our 2 questions. Question 1. Nowadays, more and more tasks at home and work are performed by robots. Why do you think this is happening? Do the advantages outweigh the disadvantages? Question 2. Many doctors recommend that older people exercise regularly, but most older people do not follow any exercise routine. Why do you think this is happening? How can these people be encouraged to exercise regularly? So, everyone, pause the lecture, take a minute to a minute 30 seconds, and do your full question analysis. Okay, let's take a look. For the first one, the general essay topic is about robots. The limiting language, home, and work task. That's all we're talking about in terms of robots. Instruction words, why is it happening, and also advice on the internet, and how can you motivate them to follow a routine? That is the limitation of the question. You cannot go outside of that box. Okay, question analysis, class practice 4. Let's get into it. We have 3 questions in front of us. Question 1 in red, some people believe that in the next 100 years, most people will have a better life, while others disagree. What is your opinion? Question 2, some people say that rich people are the most successful in society. Others think that those who contribute to society, like scientists and teachers, are more successful. Discuss both sides and give your opinion. Question 3 in white, nowadays, many people prefer to seek medical advice on the internet instead of seeking a qualified doctor. What are the reasons for it? Is it a positive or negative development? Okay, so pause the lecture, take a couple of minutes, and do a full analysis for each question. Okay, so for our first question in red, the general topic is the future. Our restrictive language, are the next 100 years better for personal life? This is an opinion question. There's only one part. Body 1 is your opinion. Body 2 is your opinion. They're not separate parts here. Our second question, the general topic is about success and people. The restrictive language, rich people, scientists, teachers. Our direction words, both sides, and give an opinion. 3 parts here. Our third question, general essay topic is medicine. The restrictive language, internet advice over qualified doctors, choosing. Our direction words, what are the reasons? Is it positive or negative? There are 2 question parts here. Now, how do students mess up or bobble this question? For the first one, the only real way you can bobble this question is by talking about maybe modern life and people liking modern life, or talking about the past, or comparing the future and the past. Your job is to put yourself in the future. Put yourself in the future and talking about whether or not people are going to have a better life. Whether or not they're going to have a better life. Also, a student can really mess up this first question in red by not using future tense verbs, not using future tense language. That's a great way, or really a poor way that a student will mess up the question. For our second one, of course, not having a balanced discussion, first explaining about rich people, then explaining about success for teachers and scientists, and then having a clear opinion. Having clear paragraphing is so important to scoring well. For our third question, misunderstanding what it refers to. Very often students misunderstand reference pronouns. In addition, this question is not about why you should seek the advice of a qualified doctor or why qualified doctors are better. That's not what it's about. You must only talk about why people are seeking advice on the internet instead of a qualified doctor. All right, question analysis practice 5. Let's keep going, keep working at it, Keep progressing, because if you get better at this, you're going to score better. Again, we have 3 questions. Our first question in red. Nowadays, there is more and more competition between older and younger people for the same job. What problems does this create? How can it be solved? Question 2 in blue. Some people argue that companies and private individuals, rather than governments, should pay to clean up the pollution they produced. To what extent do you agree or disagree? Question 3. Nowadays, people in most countries decide to have children much later in life. Why do they do so? Do the advantages of this trend outweigh the disadvantages? Okay, pause the lecture, take a couple of minutes, and do a full analysis for each question. All right, our first question in red. The general topic is about employment and jobs. That's the general macro topic. Our restrictive language is old and young competing for the same job. Our direction words, problems and solutions. What problems does this create? What solutions? This has 2 parts. Our middle question in blue. General topic, pollution. Could be the environment, but general topic, pollution. The restrictive limiting language, company and private responsibility, not government. Our direction words are to what extent of agreements you have, to what extent you agree or disagree. This could have 1 to 2 parts, determining in what way you talk about it. So this is a to what extent question. You could 100% agree, then you will have 1 part. You could 100% disagree, then you will have 2 parts. Or you can mainly agree and somewhat disagree, right? There are different ways of approaching it. Maybe you will really agree that companies should have more responsibility than governments. And then you may only slightly agree that private individuals should have responsibility rather than governments. To what extent? To what extent? Third question. General topic is children, restrictive language, having them later in life, direction words, why, and also more advantages than disadvantages. Do the advantages outweigh? 2 parts. How do students mess up these questions? For our first one in red, the main way the students fail is by talking about or writing about causes. This essay question is not about the causes of why there's competition, right? It's also not about why young people are better at certain jobs or vice versa. In blue, not discussing companies and private individuals will result in a lower score. You can't only talk about companies and not talk about private individuals. To what extent? Also failing to express to what extent you agree or disagree. For our final question, discussing children in any context outside of why people have them later in life. Also addressing only 1 part of the question or not focusing on the word outweigh. Right? You're not talking about these are the advantages, these are the disadvantages. Outweigh, outweigh. Okay, everybody, let's move forward to question analysis class practice 6. Let's keep up the pace, let's keep up the motivation. We have 3 questions. First question in red. Human activities have negative effect on plant and animal species. Some people think it's too late to do anything about this problem. Others believe that effective measures can still be taken to improve this situation. Discuss both views and give your opinion. Second question in blue. Today, more and more full-time university students spend a lot of time on other activities rather than time studying. Some people think it is essential for students to be involved in other activities. To what extent do you agree or disagree? Third question. Online shopping is significantly increasing. What effects does this have? What are the disadvantages? And what are the job opportunities? Okay, stop the lecture, take a couple of minutes, and do a full analysis. Okay, for our first one, the general essay topic is about plants and animals. It's also possible you could have the general essay topic about human activities. It doesn't matter. The restrictive language doesn't change. Negative effects on plants and animals from human actions. That's the restrictive language. Our direction words are to discuss both views and give your opinion. Our second question. The general essay topic is about university school activities, or maybe even university is our general topic. Our limiting language is whether it's critical that students participate in outside activities, right? Whether it's critical that they participate in outside activities. And then our direction words are to what extent? To what extent do you believe this? To what extent? You may not fully agree. You may like 75% agree, 25% disagree. You have to make sure that you express that in your writing. For our third question, the general topic is online shopping. The restrictive or limiting language deals with increasing, that it's increasing. You have three parts here: the effects, disadvantages, and jobs created. Now, some people may look at it and say, hey, aren't the disadvantages the effects? No, not necessarily. First, they ask you about effects. Just what are the effects? Then they're asking you to talk about disadvantages. How do students mess up the question? For our first one, not understanding the reference of this problem in this situation that we're
So, guys, let's conclude today's session here. Tomorrow, I'm planning to write more essays and we will do an analysis tomorrow.